The PicoScope has a standard feature for decoding serial buses. In this video we're going to be looking at the menu system for setting up the decode. The system decodes 4 serial buses, and these are available under the protocol menu, and the supported buses are the CAN bus, I²C, RS232 and SPI. And in this example we're going to be acquiring some I²C data to illustrate the menu system. Channel A has here been connected to the data line of an I²C signal. So I'm just going to run the acquisition, and here we can see the random bursting nature of the data. Typically these buses have a clock and a data line, so I've connected channel B to the clock line of an I²C signal. So I'll auto-arrange the axes so we can see clearly the data and the clock. So at this point we can go into the trigger menu and set up a single trigger, because typically the acquisition is done on a single trigger basis, and then we can decode the data. So now we're going to select the tools menu and go ahead and set up the decode. So here we can see channels A and B are turned on, so I'm going to use channel A to set up the I²C data, and it's automatically then allocated channel B as the clock signal, so the whole setup for the I²C is in this one panel. So the next thing we need to check is the thresholds, and this can again be done automatically. So in fact it's 150 millivolts and 200 millivolts for the threshold levels. Under the settings menu, this will vary for each particular bus. So this is the setup for the I²C. So for example we can select 7 and 8-bit data. The next item along is where the decoded data is displayed. It can either be in the acquisition view or in a separate window. So I'm going to leave it in the acquisition window initially. And under this is some information about the record length required. So currently we are selecting 1 million samples, but to decode the data we only need 1.9 kilosamples. So I am in fact going to reduce the record length. This will make the decode time very fast, so it'll make the system more interactive. So as soon as we now acquire the data, it will try and go ahead and decode it. Now we're seeing here unknown. This is because the time window is not sufficient to acquire a whole packet to allow the system to synchronize and decode. So I'm going to have to increase the time window, in fact, to 500 microseconds, and then I will acquire, in fact, a whole packet of data. And now we can see we've successfully decoded some packets. So here, for example, packet 2 is an address. It's got slave address as 53. It's a write, and there was an acknowledgement, and we see the start and end times of the packet. And similarly we can move along the acquisition and see packet 3 and packet 4. In fact, this is the start of the packet, and this here is the end of the packet. So we could similarly view this data in a separate window. So we could return to the setup menu, and here I could turn off in the current view and select a separate window. So that's okay, and this will set up a decode window. So here we see again the 3 packets, again with the address 53, the write, any data values that have been acquired, the acknowledgement, and the start and end time of the packets. And then there's additional setups in the toolbar. So we could export the data to Excel. This is a toggle button which will either hold the current acquisition and add new acquisitions to it. So if I toggle the button and make a new acquisition, at the moment we have 3 bytes, 3 packets of data, and I acquire more, they've been added to the previous acquisition. This is very useful if you've acquired some good data and then change the system, want to acquire some more data. And if I acquire some more packets, they will be added to the current acquisitions. And it's a toggle, so I toggle it off and make a new acquisition, it'll just take the current display and display it on the screen. The next item along is the view menu. Here we can customize the display in the decode window. So here, for example, are the packets. So for example, I could turn on the start and stop packet. So here we see the start of the packet now and the stop part of the packet, and it gives us the time here. So the start time was minus 188 microseconds before the trigger point, and the stop point was 2.2 milliseconds after the trigger point. And we could check this with some cursors. So I could put the cursor on the trigger point and take a second cursor and put it on, so this is the end of the packet. So the delta time there is 2.2 milliseconds, which corresponds, and if we move the cursor to the start of the packet, so we get minus 192 microseconds, which corresponds there. Again, we can turn off the cursors, and again we could remove the packet start and stop display. Typically we want to view the address, data and errors and unknowns. Under the field menu, again, a lot of items can be added or removed from the display. So for example, if we didn't want to look at the acknowledgement or the start and stop of the packets, we could turn those off to simplify the display. Or other items could be added. So for example, if we wanted to see the baud rate, we could add that and see this particular system was running at 97 kilobaud. These can be turned on and off after the data has been acquired. We don't have to reacquire new data. I'm going to increase the time window now and acquire more packets of data. So here we can see now some more transfers. And what we can do now is we can link it to a link file, which can give it, rather than just data values, we can customize it to our own particular system. So for example, if I browse and choose a link file, and now we can see it's decoded a data value to stop. And we can turn this on and off, so I turn none on. So the data was 11, but my link file has decoded that again to stop. So we can customize our display to more meaningful names. We can also decide where to acquire data, so we can take the field number, for example, and only say go from display from number 12. So rather than displaying all the data, we can selectively choose where to display data from. We have some filters, so we can add a filter and put some name here, so we can put our own text in to give it more meaningful names. And that can be turned off and on. We can add stats to the measurements, so again we can add stats to any of the measurements that have been acquired. And we can search for any particular value, so if we wanted to search for any particular value of data, we can go ahead and search and it will find that for us. We can refresh the display and then clear the display and make a new acquisition. So it's possible to customize each particular display panel, and then this can be saved as a setup and then recalled for future use.